Hey everybody, welcome back to GR Research, where today I'm doing something a little different. I'm doing a response to another video, which is something I've never done before. But in this case, I was kind of invited to, so I'm going to give this a shot. Somebody sent a message in to Paul McGowan over at PS Audio, and Paul has a very popular YouTube channel where he's on dropping videos all the time, has lots of followers. And someone asked him the question about tube connectors and kind of what he thought about tube connectors. And there seemed to be a little confusion there as to what a tube connector really was or how it worked. And even Paul seemed to feel like he likes a binding post rather than a banana plug. And so I thought, well, there's definitely some confusion here. The banana plugs are something that goes on the speaker cable end versus the binding post that goes on the speaker itself. And there's two separate things we're dealing with here as far as connections, what's on the speaker versus what's on the cables, and how those interact with each other, and how to get a good connection, and how those things matter. And Paul responded with, yeah, absolutely, cables make a big difference. And yeah, they can make a big difference, especially in systems like ours. You can swap out any cable and hear an immediate difference. And the same can be said with a lot of these connectors, especially with the tube connectors. That offers the biggest and the best, connection that there is as far as, the clarity, the detail levels. And when you're starting with something like what we see in a lot of these speakers we upgrade, you're going from the worst to the very best, and the differences are significant. Now, this is a standard dual binding post that we see in a lot of speakers. This is not something of ours. We just had it here in stock. The connectors are brass. The plates between the two usually are tin. All of this is gold coated, gold plated, so it looks pretty. But this is not a good conductor. And on the back side we see steel nuts and steel tabs to solder to or to connect to. So not the best thing to put in the signal path. So when we throw in an upgrade to a set of tube connectors for a couple of these, we're going from the very worst connection possible to the very best. So the difference is often pretty substantial, and the customers usually respond back to us and let us know just how big that difference was and how they couldn't believe how much difference a connector can make. It can be a pretty big difference. And here's another one here that's very typical of what you see out there. Plastic ends on it. And again, steel ends, steel screws. And anytime you have ferromagnetic parts in the signal path, that's not a good sign. Now, if the speaker is being used for, say, somebody's purchasing one of our kits and they want to build it for their garage or for the surround speakers for their theater system or something like that, they don't need the highest level of performance. They may build our base level kit. It's just standard poly caps and standard binding posts. And here's some of our binding post cups that we offer because they don't cost anything. These are cheap to import. All of ours do have brass ends on them. They do have some steel nuts on them, and some of our customers have learned a lot. And they go in and they find some brass screws or brass nuts to replace that. That is a nice little tweak that gets those out of the path. These don't cost very much. They don't cost much to have made, and we just use them in budget level applications. Another popular thing to use are the speak-on connectors, and we use tons of these speak-on connectors. And there are some copper plates in here that make the connections. You have a male end and a female end. A lot of times we'll mount this on our servo subs, and we'll mount the speaker cable on the male end, and that simply just clicks in place, and it makes a nice connection that doesn't come out easily. Wow, in fact, I can't get this one off. And I don't know what the deal is with this one. The problem, though, is the tightening screws are steel, and as good as these are, we only use these on our servo subs. We don't use these in applications where the signal is being used is above 200 hertz. If the signal is more of a full range signal, this gives up a lot to the tube connectors. So great for subwoofer applications. We don't like using it above that 200 hertz mark. It degrades the sound too much. So let's look at binding posts and talk about those a little bit. The difference in binding posts can vary quite a bit from this stuff to some of the more high-end binding posts out there. And when a lot of guys are out there comparing high-end binding posts like these from Vampire, which are high purity copper, or the WBT ends, or the ones from Cardus, or some of those, all of those companies make pretty good binding posts. And when you compare one to the other, you're somewhat doing a lateral move in a lot of cases. So you're not going to notice a huge difference in performance unless you're comparing it to something like this. Then you're going to notice, wow, that's a pretty significant improvement in performance. But let's look at the problems involved in binding posts. And this one here, I think, is a copper with a silver over copper. This was actually copper. It's gold coated. Most, though, are brass. Most of the binding posts that you see out there are brass. They have some type of a nut or end on it, and the steel screws. Those are the worst. At least some of the more high-end ones will use a brass nut or a copper nut on them. One of my favorites was the stuff we use from Vampire Wire, and it uses all copper base metal. It's silver coated and then gold coated. Some of the other ones that you may see from WBT and some of the Cardus, they may be pure copper and then silver coated and rhodium coated, and those are pretty nice posts. The problem with a binding post, for one thing, is you still have to solder your internal speaker wire to that thing. So a lot of times people try to solder directly to it, but because it's high mass, it's really hard to solder to. So what happens then is they will put the nuts on these things, and in between the nuts, which you have to get inside the speaker with a wrench and start twisting on those things, that's a mess. Sometimes that's hard to even reach in the speaker. What they'll do is they'll use this little thin tab to solder the wire on. So you'll solder the wire to this little tab, and it'll have so you've got a little ring on it, and then the ring sets between the nuts. And a lot of times you put a lock on there, and then put the other nut on it and tighten it down on there. And now you've got your wire connected on the inside to this little tab, and the signal's having to pass all the way through this high mass post. And then what do we connect on the end of that? Well, like Paul, I prefer a spade over a banana plug. You know, a banana plug are typically always brass. They have a spring mechanism in them here, and if they make these out of copper, it's difficult because once you squeeze that copper down, it doesn't spring back very well. So they're typically brass. We offer some of these banana plugs in our cable kits. We have a speaker cable kit you can build where you pick out the cable and how many feet you want, and then you pick out the ends, whether you want spades or bananas or tube connector ends to go with your kit. And so we do have banana plugs in stock. We also have spades in stock, and these are high purity all copper spades. So like Paul, I like the spade connector better than I do the banana plug, and you can wrench down on that thing and tighten it up. And so now here's what you have in your signal path. You got a speaker cable going to the spade, and then you've got another speaker cable way down here connected to this little tab on the inside. All this is in the signal path. All this big chunk of metal here. So you got a high mass connection. And again, it varies from company to company as to how good those are. The WBTs make some low mass connections, which are very good. The problem I have with some of those, and I think these may be some early versions, is they break easily. If you just push down on this one way or another, or twist it too hard, it just twists them off. The Nix gens are real popular. They're a nice connection. That is a problem with those. We stock used to stock a lot of the Cardus connectors. Again, the Cardus binding post is nice binding post, but it's difficult to mount. You've still got to get inside with a nut to tighten it down, and somehow you got to get that wire connected to it. And if you don't think all this stuff in the signal path makes a difference, string together a whole bunch of them. Take a bunch of these things and hook a cable to it, a little short cable, and hook another push-on connector to that end, and maybe then on this end hook a spade to another little cable, and hook just string together a whole bunch of these things, and let a bunch of them be in the signal path, and hear how that sounds. So absolutely, all those connections are not good in the signal path, and the more of them you have, the more it degrades the signal. So the solution is the tube connector. Now, the tube connector is a hollow copper tube, not brass, not any of these other steel parts or anything. It's a hollow copper tube. And the end that goes on the other end, the male end, is not a banana plug. It's not a banana plug. This is hollow all the way to the tip as well. So when you strip your speaker cable and you insert it into this, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on because I'm old now, playing the senior game, so I'm old. And so this thing's hollow. So you're going to slide that thing all the way through to the tip. Then you're going to crimp it, and you're going to solder it there to seal it up, and put some heat shrink on it. So your wire is all the way to the tip of the male connector. Now what you do then is you insert that male connector into the tube connector, that hollow copper tube, and that hollow copper tube has a slit down it and a slit down around it the other way, and so it has a little spring mechanism where it opens up. So when you slide that male end into it, it kind of forces that open, and there is a little Teflon tube that goes around it that's mounted around that part that flexes, and then it goes into the machine that does the injection molded plastic that puts this piece around it. So there's a lot that goes into making these, especially this part that's milled out of a billet chunk of copper. So it's kind of hard to make this stuff. There's a little bit of a high rejection rate, but at least the rejected ones go back into scrap. So we've got the male end that we insert into it, and now we have a stop point on the inside. Now we can put your internal speaker wire into it till it touches it, and then crimp that and solder it and seal it, put some heat shrink on it. And now what we've got is we've got your external speaker cable and your internal speaker cable just like this, just tip to tip on the inside of a copper tube. So you got a low mass copper tube, high contact area. So a much better signal transfer. It's basically you've got your internal speaker wire and your external speaker wire tip to tip surrounded by a copper tube. So we got all of this mass and everything out of the signal path. So the signal transfer is much cleaner, and it definitely sounds better, especially when you compare it to some of this stuff that has steel parts on it and everything else. Now, some of the people are saying, yeah, but it's $59. Guys, that's a bargain. For what these cost to have made versus what I'm selling these for, let's look at the price. Let's look at some of the Cardus CCBP in the long links. That's a binding post that's about this long, and it's just pure copper, no plating or anything. They're $66 a pair. Remember, that's $66 a pair for the part that goes on the speaker. That doesn't include the spade or the banana plugs that go on the speaker cable itself. The spades or banana plugs can get way up there in price too. And I'll get to those in just a moment. How about the Cardus CCRR binding post? That's their long one that is pure copper, and I think that one is silver coated and rhodium coated. And those are $100 a pair. $100 a pair. How about the WBT Next Gen? WBT Next Gens are $94 for a pair. That's two of these, $94. And then they've got a model that's the 0735. They're $300 for a set of four. And then how about the Vampire? The Vampire ones are pretty reasonable. This is the BP Hex. This is the long one. They're about $70 per pair. And then keep in mind, we still got to terminate the speaker cable in. Here's some of the Vampire banana plugs here. Those banana plugs from Vampire are $21.80 for a set. So those four, $21.80 plus shipping. The Vampire spade, I don't have one of the Vampire spades here, but they're high purity copper spades. They sell those for $24 for a set. So $24 for a set of four of those. How about the Cardus makes a spade, and the Cardus one's list on theirs is $36 a piece. And then they have, I think over at Sonic Craft, they have those marked down to $18 a piece. So the WBTs, they have a nice spade kit, a set of 4 of theirs. It's the WBT 0681. Those are $400 for 4 spades. So if you start looking at the high quality connectors out there, you know, let's look at the card that's the least expensive. It's $66 a pair. Now you need 2 of those pair, plus you need the spades to go with it. You're at $150 for a set of good binding posts and spades. Versus the tube connectors, they're $59 for 4 of these, and that includes the 4 male ends as well. So when you're buying that for $59, you're getting the end that goes on the speaker cable and the end that goes on the back of the speaker. So it's really a bargain. It's about a third the price of the cheapest of all the decent quality binding posts and spade connectors that there are out there. So 1, it's the best connection, and 2, it's a bargain for what it costs. Even the markup that we have to put on this, and we make thousands of these things at a time just to get the price down, and we're still not marking them up that much. There's no other middlemen. You know, we're not selling them through a dealer. All these other binding posts you buy, they're being sold to a dealer, and the dealer's marking them up, and then you're getting them. We're just giving it to you straight. So we're giving you a great price on it. We're giving you the best quality connection and the best quality sound and signal transfer of anything that's out there. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit, educates you a little more on tube connectors. And if you guys are interested in those, let us know. I've got thousands more that are on the way that are supposed to be due in next week. And I know I've got a lot of orders sitting in shop waiting for tube connectors. We probably have 250 to 300 orders now that are orders that are filled waiting for tube connectors to get here. They're very popular. We sell tons of these things, and it's hard to keep them in stock. We've got another 10,000 of them on order behind this order. So hopefully we'll start getting caught up and not be caught out right now. You know, because of COVID and trying to get supplies, it's hard to get stuff made right now, and it's really delayed having more tube connectors made. But they're getting made. They're on the way. Hang in there with us. We're going to get them sent out. If you have any questions, post them in the comments section. Thanks for subscribing to the videos, and see you on the next one.